Hello and welcome to the broadcast here at We Are Change Melbourne. Thank you for joining me. I'm still currently battling 7 charges before the courts, all of which I'm fighting vigorously. I have been representing myself in an effort to keep the costs down. Any financial assistance would be much appreciated. There is information in the description for how you can go about doing that. With your help, I will be able to combat these false and malicious charges. But today's show will be covering topics such as free speech, government corruption, and the tyranny that we've all experienced. I welcome to the show a fellow journalist who is consistently bringing you breaking news and delivering truth. We have interviewed many of the same guests. I bring to you Tim Wilms. Hi Tim, welcome to the show. Now, you have proven yourself and your dedication to journalism and the truth community, having stood the test of many difficult times. How are you going there today?
I'm going well. I mean, I've survived the past 2.5 years of what we've been through, particularly here in Melbourne, Victoria, going through government oppression, tyranny like I'd never thought I'd see in my lifetime here in Australia, but persevered through this, the greatest challenge, told as much truth as I could without getting my door kicked in, but yeah, it's just another sign that the platforms such as mine, alternate media in general, is needed now more than ever, because the mainstream media's lies and fear and has just gotten so much worse over the past 2.5 years. We're living in quite extraordinary times when truth, facts are being redefined.
Yes, they certainly are. Compliments on all your hard work. They definitely ramped up the attacks against the people, and we copped the full brunt of it here in Melbourne through the lockdowns, restrictions, government corruption. They wanted people to literally be in fear of leaving their homes, and we copped relentless streams of propaganda, the major tyranny that we've been faced with, and so many challenges along the way. It has really been horrific, hasn't it?
Definitely. And I think that as we saw, particularly during the federal election campaign, both of the major parties, they were eager not to talk about what they'd subjected us to with lockdowns, the mandates, and the passports. They were all removed in time for the election. And well, it's August winter here. It's the first August winter here since 2019, where it's been relatively normal. But we should, even though it's quite traumatic for many people, to just remember just the insanity and just what a monster megalomaniac Dan Andrews was at those daily press conferences, saying that we were going to end up in hospital if we watch sunsets, just to give you one example.
Yes, it's absolutely ludicrous, and there was no logic behind some of the measures that were implemented, and that led to mental illness and the whole mental health care system really being overburdened. A lot of people couldn't handle, as you said, the trauma, the anguish, being isolated from loved ones. This was a contributing factor to a lot of people having nervous breakdowns, and we've seen people that were restricted from visiting elderly family members in nursing homes as well. So we really felt it on so many levels. You mentioned the censorship as well, trying to broadcast a strong message that we are really under serious attack. Getting the information out became increasingly difficult. Many videos removed. I've really experienced that here. How has your broadcasting gone? Have you received some of the backlash from some of the content and material that has been published over there?
In terms of had a few episodes removed, that YouTube, they've realized that, when something's allowed to become a fact, YouTube, they just forget that they ever censored it.
Yeah, they certainly have. We've seen a lot of that. And what's currently trending in a lot of headlines is the Alex Jones case lately. They've made an example out of him to send a clear message to anyone that feels inclined to question certain events and have their own critical thinking skills that are being utilised. They really want to deter anybody from doing that. That seems to be the overall agenda at play with this, doesn't it?
Well, I'll just say for the record, Alex Jones was wrong. He's been proven right on most things. While, as I just mentioned before, mainstream media lies and fear, they blatantly lie. And of course, they're never held accountable because they always pick on the little people, and they've got the protection of the big government and the other corporations. And they tried dismantling Alex Jones and InfoWars in 2018, wiping him off all mainstream social media. He was one of the first, and that didn't end him. And so these punitive damages, as they're called, that's the new thing that they're going to try and destroy him with. But if there was justice for all, I mean, we've only seen the mainstream media taken on in two circumstances: the Nicholas Sandman Covington kids defamation, and of course Kyle Rittenhouse. They get away with so much, and they know that they can, the mainstream media.
Yes, absolutely right. And people's views may differ when it comes to the accuracy of some of the statements Alex has made. But regardless, it's definitely an infringement on freedom of speech, human rights, and it virtually becomes extortion when money comes into play and lawsuits are put before courts, doesn't it?
Yes, that is the aim. They think that they've finally got Alex Jones now, but you should never underestimate him and his reach. I mean, and as I mentioned, I mean, his following is increased because he's been proven right on most things. Even the chemicals turning the frogs gay, even though that was made into a meme, he was actually proven right on that.
Yes, that's exactly it. And people should be doing their own research. It should be healthy to question the government and what's put forward with the mainstream media. We know Operation Mockingbird, they're getting scripts delivered straight from the CIA. We've seen they're delivering a lot of the same monologue to cameras, reading off a teleprompter. It's all very much controlled in that regard. And certain narratives and agendas are relentlessly pushed. And they try and, yes, very much persuade people, if anything, not to think for themselves, as they'll be judged, labels as fringe members of society, and people are experiencing that sort of treatment. And that seems to be growing, doesn't it?
Press conferences, only accredited media were allowed to be there. Sure, there was some who turned up from time to time, Peter Credlin, to ask critical questions, but there was nobody allowed in there who would really question the narrative. I mean, most of the time, the mainstream media, they're always baying for more restrictions. Why don't you do a more even insane lockdown? Why won't you bring this year? It's been, why don't you bring back masks and have the police begin to fine people any as well? And the mainstream media, they in fact want the politicians to go further. And the most obvious form of gatekeeping that we saw was Avi Yemeni not allowed at Dan Andrews' press conference, he was promptly evicted.
Yes, and that looks like a sign of guilt when they become apprehensive and very determined to prevent people from having an independent outlook or broadcasting, filming protests or gatherings. We've seen law enforcement become very hostile when the cameras are switched on them. A lot of that, people are gathering fraud information that substantiates that they are very reluctant to be seen on camera because of some of the police brutality, some of the corruption and wrongdoing. They don't want to be caught on film delivering heavy-handed tactics towards the public, which we've seen oh so much, haven't we?
Yes, it was. We thought 2020 was bad with Victoria Police's brutality, but they took it to a whole new level in 2021 with the rubber bullets. And we saw that brutal smashdown of that elderly lady, pepper sprayed, lying defenseless on the ground, and those special ops teams with their tanks. It's still incredible to remember that happened. And this is what I think. A lot of people, they want to put at the back of their memory, but this could happen again. And there's a lot of people who would love for it to happen again. There's a whole new a segment of the populations who they just love the lockdowns and the mask mandates. I mean, they're still wearing their masks everywhere, and so there is this new segment now who would love it all to happen again.
Yeah, there's some people that thrive off the chaos. Others have been mentally manipulated and conditioned to go ahead with the protective coverings over the face. They've gone through with the QR scanning. They've become habituated to this style of living. That's why independent media is so important, being able to broadcast alternative viewpoints and facts. It helps the public make a more informed decision on what's taking place and have a better opinion that they can formulate through. Now, we have seen a lot of weapons used against the public. I was at Canberra and I covered a story here at We Are Change Melbourne on people that have suffered from the effects of radiation. We've seen through a lot of the attacks, as well as the chemtrails, long-range acoustic devices. We've seen people returning from Canberra with burnt lips, faces. They had migraines, unable to hold down water. And yeah, a lot of people were suffering in a really serious way. Did you witness this crisis or hear of any of this aftermath that took place?
I wasn't at Canberra during the protests. The sonic long-range weapons, they were on standby. That's definitely not in dispute. And I recall it was both Senators Antic and Rennick who questioned the AFP over this. In terms of chemtrails, I'm not sold on the idea that there's these chemicals sprayed over site. I am aware of these allegations that the floods and in Lismore and Brisbane and Sydney are weather manipulated. Given that we've seen Premier Perrottet say he's going to build back Lismore better, but in terms of this. I don't believe that governments, they are with new technology capable of really terrifying surveillance and tyranny, but they are still incompetent and disorganized. I mean, I've heard the theory that the floods were designed to have a high speed rail put through Lismore, and I just go back to the fact like Albanese was talking about, what is it? He's been talking about high-speed rail for like 15 years back when he was in the Rudd government. I just think it's never going to be built. I mean, there were the same sort of theories about the Black Summer bush fires, and yeah, I don't think our government is capable of pulling off something that sophisticated.
It's good to have healthy discussion on these matters, exchange information and viewpoints. I believe that's all very productive, and people having even different opinions, that can be positive too, and looking at the situation from different perspectives. We have seen reports emerge recently warning certain residents not to drink their tank water, avoid rainwater due to heavy levels of aluminium and barium. A lot of people are attributing this to the chemical trails that are being sprayed. These particles are falling to the earth. They've conducted soil samples as well. They've had lab results. A lot of people have witnessed this, but yeah, a lot of people as well are still on the fence, and yeah, they find it not practical. And it's interesting to look at that from that level as well, isn't it? It's good to keep an open mind.
I have seen those recent reports about the rain that's falling, particularly being toxic. But yeah, I certainly am not convinced. And mainstream media are always telling you that something is toxic. I mean, it's again their fear agenda. But certainly, I mean, with the amount of various chemicals and processes that every sort of item goes through, it's not a surprise that there's sort of traces of various sort of other elements in there. I mean, it's the fact that we're such urbanized people now, and everything's manufactured. I know that a lot of people are returning to natural living, growing their own farms, and building their own various, well, not homes, but just DIY projects themselves, which is fantastic. I mean, you want to be self-reliant, particularly, well, anything could still happen. I mean, we've obviously seen it has affected us indirectly, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and we don't know what's going to happen with the South China Sea. You don't want to be completely dependent on, for example, Uber Eats and all those sorts of advances in technology that have made life more convenient, because this is how governments, they've been able to increase your reliance. Say it's for your convenience. I mean, this is what they're pushing, that what is it, trusted digital identity bill. It's for your convenience. This is how it's always sold. And don't get me wrong, like digital convenience, it's great, but just remember that it can be used for bad, and it can just be switched off as well. You always got to keep this in mind.
You most certainly do. And they say, you know, it really helps with our convenience, and in an essence, yeah, it very much does. But when the technology is used for nefarious reasons, track and trace measures and scanning of QR codes, locking people's information in, data collection, and yeah, really uploading that to the grid, that's when it becomes very much intrusive and a breach of privacy, which a lot of people have experienced. And yes, due to the destruction and the bankruptcy of small to medium businesses, we've seen a redistribution of wealth during this time to some of the bigger corporations. It's led a lot of people to look at off-grid living, how to be self-sufficient, and try and stay with the long term and look to their future, because it's very uncertain when these restrictions are put in place. They don't see much of a future for small business owners, it's very unpredictable, isn't it, the climate we're in?
Certainly. And you have to go back if you go back to 2019, nobody thought that the destruction of people's lives, livelihoods, the tyranny could ever occur, but it has. And of course, now we're seeing, well, the hangover from the pandemic lockdowns and restrictions, rampant inflation. That's mainly because of reserve banks hyperinflating, printing more money is the most basic way to explain it. And we're seeing, obviously, when there's always dips in the various COVID waves, it turns to the climate agenda. We're supposedly in another climate consensus. But what we saw, we came so close in June for power blackouts here. The Northern Hemisphere winter is looking very grim with, what is it, bills in the UK almost growing by 4 times. So many having to rely on already food banks, as we call them here. And we've seen just how fragile a food supply can be with that the disaster in Sri Lanka with the Rajapaksas enforcing that quack synthetic fertilizer, bankrupting the nation and leaving the population hungry and without fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen the prices of some grocery items, and the produce has been really outrageous. Lettuces, and yeah, it makes it difficult for some of the farmers, the price of milk, and yeah, inflation. Now is the time to look at setting up your own garden and stocking up on non-perishable items. That has been advice that we've delivered previously here on the show. And yeah, even just in increments, once a fortnight, making sure that there's a little bit more in your pantry, because yeah, it becomes unpredictable. Now, making news as well, we've seen the destroying of the Georgia Guidestones. That was taken down. Now, a lot of people believe that could have been the government responsible for that as well, because their plan has been carried out. But this was significant as well, wasn't it?
Yes, and they were looking when it happened. I looked into the history of them. Their destruction was their construction was as mysterious as their demolition, and it was incredible to me that back in they constructed late 70s, early 80s, that even back then there was this monument to globalism and depopulation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Control the population and keep it in perpetual balance with nature. And it was a clear message warning people of the impending New World Order. And we've seen a lot of this language being used on the media, didn't we? New normality, new normal as well. That seemed to be something that was quite often parroted on television as well, making sure people understand that this is a new age that we're living in, and to make the necessary adjustments and sacrifices. This was a reoccurring statement, wasn't it?
Well, they're not even hiding it anymore. I mean, if you want to see a new world order being planned, like the World Economic Forum, their recent meeting in Davos, like you just watch it. But then we have, of course, the fact checkers who say, no, just because this politician said new world order, they didn't actually mean a new world order. You didn't actually hear what was said. And obviously with these phrases, the Great Reset, Build Back Better, they're only a conspiracy theory if you disagree with them. I mean, what is it? got in my bookshelf here Klaus Schwab's Great Reset, just to read for myself. It's a real book written by him and someone else, but no, apparently, even though he wrote he didn't just coin the phrase, but wrote the book, apparently it's still a conspiracy theory.
Yes, and it's good to study up on these war manuals and familiarize yourself with the agenda that the globalists are implementing, and even persuading people to contemplate the idea of consuming bugs as a plausible food source due to the high levels of protein that is contained. I mean, surely they cannot fathom that people would eat this as a regular meal and a staple in their diet. I mean, that's preposterous, isn't it?
They've been pushing it pretty hard. Their friends in the mainstream media. I played a few on my shows. There was this 7 News reporter who went to this lab where they were basically sort of cooking bugs for consumption. And there was, I'm not sure if you saw the Vanity Fair Nicole Kidman video where she has a 3-course meal with bugs. Because of course, if you want something to catch on, you get a celebrity to endorse it and set it as a trend. But I certainly think that it's going to be a lot bigger sell than like, obviously they're very confident now since they got people to be terrified, locked in their homes and wear masks for 2 years. They're very confident, but there are more people awake now, and there's certainly a lot of people snapping out of it. So it's not turning out to be as easy as they thought.
Yes, and that's right. They use a lot of celebrities as mascots or spokespeople, cheerleaders for the agenda when it comes to certain ideas. And if it's their idols that they look up to, then they'll follow those trends and they'll follow that right to the letter. And if they're endorsing something that the globalists are pushing, it makes it a very effective operation for them. And we've seen that, and that's used for many different narratives, many different operations, whether it's elections, whether it's, it just covers the whole board, doesn't it? And that's an effective strategy to use, isn't it?
Oh yes, and it's been used for years and years. I mean, the Hollywood celebrities, they were pushing the 60s radicals, beginning the cultural Marxist agenda way back then. But it was interesting here in Melbourne, Victoria. There was actually many celebrities who were openly critical of the pandemic narrative. Andrew Bogut, he's got his own podcast now. He's telling first-hand accounts of the horrors that's continuing to go on in Victoria's health system, aged care. Dave Hughes, who would have thought that he would be one of the sensible voices, the former Project host, and Tina Arena as well, because it was just so brutal. The lockdown, the tyranny here in Victoria. Even there were many prominent local celebrities who were like, "This is insane."
Yes, it is, and that's a promising sign when people speak out against the establishment. They start talking truth, and that saves their soul and very good for their conscience. However, a lot of people are in fear of not having their contracts renewed or being terminated from their stations and labels because of speaking out against the establishment. That keeps a lot of people reluctant, doesn't it? They want to toe the corporate line so they can keep receiving their checks, and they want their star to rise and their whole social status to increase. So they remain in silence because of that. And that's a very troubling thought, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say it's just high-profile celebrities. I mean, there's so many people who are just scared to speak out, just normal people, for fear of losing their job, because that means they'd lose their home that they're paying a mortgage on, because cancel culture has become so much more pervasive, that if you just go against the current zeitgeist woke causes, there's of course they're called the Twitter drip brigade in Australia, who just do the social media pile-on, bombarding various companies' HR departments. Your employee said this. What are you going to do about it?
Yes, and yeah, that's a weapon that they use to keep people in fear and the judgment and ridicule, especially around even family members who people should feel trusting and safe in their company. They still remain quiet and reluctant to speak out on certain subjects because they don't want to be outcast in a lot of social and family groups and not being invited to special occasions and Christmas. This seems to be ever present. It was so powerful to have a lot of protests and the meeting up at Canberra, and even small community groups meeting up, like-minded individuals being able to connect. This literally saved so many lives, and yes, very healthy to have that connection with locals and feeling like they're not alone in this battle. I believe that was a really strong driving point that keeps people able to maintain and keep going. I think, yeah, that was very important too, wasn't it?
Yes, the freedom community, it's in the true definition of the word, it is diverse. I mean, there's people who might not have ever crossed paths, all different, have different views on other political issues. We've had in Melbourne, it's Australian patriots marching with Aboriginal sovereigntists, because they both believe in freedom, because that is the most important value of our time, well, most important principle, and it's the way that our society should be. The way that there's been so much unity coming together, and of course the enemies of freedom, they've always tried to divide the various factions, as they call it, in the freedom movement. But this is so important. I mean, it's the future of a free society, and so many people I've come across in the freedom movement, they've all got different reasons for being part of it, but they're such pleasant, dedicated individuals. I've interviewed many of them, and even though a lot of them, they're very well known now, they're all still very humble, because they were just before normal people.
Very well said. And your catalogue of interviews is very impressive, focusing on some of the positive aspects and what we've learnt through difficult times. It builds character and makes us better people in the long run. Now, what are some of the highlights and some of the focal points that you can look back on, things that you're very happy with, and some of your big achievements during this time and your work?
Well, probably picking something up that I had a direct influence on. There was a diversity group in Bendigo which put on their website that waving Australian flags, because there's a group of patriots up in Bendigo who wave Australian flags on Patriot Corner. They put on their website that waving Australian flags was considered hateful or not respecting diversity. My expose on that got that segment of their platform removed. So that's something I had a direct impact on. And just going by something recently, we've had a writer with us for many years, Lucas Rosas, who's done all of these exposés on Antifa activists, and including the prominent people, their Marxist backgrounds. And what is that? The one that he did many years back was on Marsha Langton, who's one of the prominent writers of the Indigenous Voice to Parliament. He did an expose on her Marxist background, and that was referenced on Sky News Outsiders on Sunday, and it was good to see that something on our website has been there for a number of years that was noted and actually picked up by a mainstream outlet. So there are obviously the cards are stacked against us in terms of reach, but it's good when you have those sort of little bits of significant influence like that, or having a role in exposing something.
Absolutely, and you should feel very proud of that. But yes, the future on YouTube, being able to remain on this platform, yes, it's very much in question. A lot of people are trying to utilize other areas and avenues like BitChute and Rumble, 153news.net, and many others as a refuge in case, yes, everything is terminated on this side. But yes, very impressive, your work and all your contributions to journalism. It's very rewarding, and you should feel very good about that. If people wanted to locate some of your content, how would they go about doing that?
Oh, well, the starting point is our website, the unshackled.net. So that obviously has our archive of written articles, essays, and expose, and also our show archives, shows that I currently produce. I do a weekly news show, Tim's News Explosion, 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time every Monday. That's streamed out to YouTube and Odyssey. I should give a plug out to Odyssey. That's also a very good free speech video platform. I still do, on occasion, my Wilms Front interviews, also 8:30 p.m. On Thursdays, and I also a co-host and produce a show, Trad Tasman Talk, with some New Zealand colleagues, Dewey De Boer and Stephen Berry, because things are even worse in New Zealand at the moment under Jacinta Ardern. I mean, she's still forcing the population to wear masks in supermarkets and other places. Inflation, cost of living is significantly worse there, as is the state of free speech. So
it certainly is. Well, I wish you all the best.
Change what's happening in our countries and what we can learn from what's happening.
Most certainly. Well, continued success with all you're doing, and I wish you the best with all your future endeavors. It's very reassuring knowing you're out there delivering truth. Thanks for appearing on the show once again, Tim.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a very, very good conversation.
Terrific. Thank you. Well, that does it for today's show. There is a lot more in store for the future, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the bell for notifications so you're aware of future uploads. And I'll catch you on the next episode of the We Are Change talk show, where we expose corruption, one show at a time.